Episode number 68 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Dr. Julie Vaughn. Julie is a Manhattan-based holistic doctor specializing in fertility. At a young age, Julie began apprenticing with healers, shamans, and doctors around the world. Julie became one of the youngest people in the U.S. to study Chinese medicine and continued her education in China, obtaining an esteemed doctoral degree. Her clinical work in New York City has spanned over a decade and has aligned her with some of the most advanced and well-known names in the field of fertility medicine. Julie merges her medical education with her initiation into earth-based and intuitive-based practices. The method, called Spiritual Fertility, which has been developed, has assisted countless couples in conceiving and carrying healthy children into the world. Her unique capacity and experience with both reproductive medicine and medical intuition makes her an extraordinary advocate for her clients. The energetic and intuitive work she shares is grounded in real clinical and medical experience. Julie's work has been called evocative, eloquent, mystical, and practical. Her most sincere desire is to help individuals to connect to the spirits of their children while guiding them to earth in the most gentle and loving ways. She lives with her husband and daughter in New York City and the Hudson River Valley. Dr. Vaughn is the author of the book Spiritual Fertility, a Hay House publication. So welcome to the podcast, Julie.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here.
So you have such a rich background of learning from healers and shamans. Can you share your journey of becoming a healer and helping many couples?
Well, that might take more than an hour, but yeah, let's give you that.
It's okay. It's okay. Whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. You know, the specific overview within my book that I talk about, my book Spiritual Fertility, kind of draws, the journey through my own journey through becoming a healer and the pathways that I took within doing that, and how that circled back around into deepening my practice and expanding my practice into more of the spiritual elements of the more classical medicine that I was trained in originally. But before I even studied alternative medicine, holistic medicine, I was already very much on the spiritual path. I think my initiations into looking at life through that lens came as soon as I was born, into an extremely religious family of missionaries. So my childhood included mission work. I always had an ethic of what it was to be of service to others. I was always visiting hospitals or nursing homes or deathbeds with my dad. So there definitely was a way that I was looking from the beginning of this lifetime for a practice of healing. And it seemed like I was given very early on the opportunities to look at some of those deeper questions about life and death and spirit. So when I graduated from high school, I've had a very untraditional path in all ways of my life. But when I graduated from high school, I was very much a kind of straight shooter at that point, and I did really well academically. So I knew that I wanted to study medicine, and I went to study medicine at university and philosophy. I wanted to study the juncture between mind and body and Cartesian dualism and all of that, and how to practice medicine. But about a year after going to university, I graduated from high school early, and I went when I was 16, so I was very young. I had a kind of, an intense kind of realization that perhaps I needed to go away from even more of the traditional path and look deeper into other ways of thinking and other levels of consciousness, other levels of healing. So I hit the road, basically. I started traveling every break I had. I started camping, and I started going to places that I knew were kind of places where people came together to pursue other types of consciousness. Santa Fe, New Mexico, Taos, all these different areas that have a rich history of spiritualism. And from there, my path began to open up more and more. So I'd say that that was the origins of my journey into working with different healers and shamanic work. My greatest, probably, and I wrote about this in the book and in the chapter on limiting beliefs, about a very important healer who I met in my early 20s who practiced traditional Chinese medicine. And I think that was one of the more important pathways in my life, meeting them at 21 and the next 6 months, the decisions I started to make out of that. But I don't think I would have been ready or prepared to have done that at 21, to leave a more, because I had this background in doing pre-med and philosophy, and I was already going more the allopathic Western route of medicine. I wouldn't have been ready to make that jump, which was still a very scary jump and difficult jump. I mean, this was 20 years ago, and I was 21. So even my classmates in school in my master's program, they were all on their second or third careers. They were all older than me. I was not very supported in my path from my family because leaving a very, of course, theoretically a path that makes you successful in the world in a very materialistic way versus a path where you're risking that was very much, it was our decision. But I wouldn't have been ready to do that had I not had all those experiences from earlier on and had followed spirit. So yeah, I'd say that is essentially why I could start on this path of holistic medicine, but also with a lens of spirituality from the very beginning.
So you had the background, or you actually have both, kind of a foot in both worlds. You're able to understand from a Western perspective, but yet you were called to learn more about traditional healing through shamanism, Eastern medicine. So you, in the beginning, dabbled into it, kind of followed that interest, but weren't completely ready to switch over. At what point were you able to really embrace that aspect of your healing?
Yeah, sure. The aspect of becoming a healer myself and studying, or
Correct. Where it's more connected and aligned in spirit.
Sure. I mean, when you start to study Chinese medicine, you learn the exogenous causes of disease and the internal causes of disease. First semester, the root of all of Chinese medicine is rooted in an acknowledgement of spirit. So I would say that there's no delineation between the two, other than perhaps what has occurred since the Cultural Revolution and modern TCM, and how it's been threaded into the West, and even now the way that most colleges and universities are becoming more biomedical in their pursuits and more integrated in their pursuits. But at the core of it, I think all of us who study Chinese medicine know that at the core there's an acknowledgement of Shen, of spirit. And I think that's why all of us are, even more materialist within the practice, are still attracted to that aspect of it. For some of us, I got to it because of spirit. I started practicing my medicine because of the fact that it acknowledged and incorporated Shen into its very roots, into its old, archaic archives, as this experience of acknowledging the energetic. So, but the moment for me where I really was able to move beyond the material kind of concept of pursuing a path that might bring me more security. By the way, there's no way that I would have ever been happy in the modern medical system. Like, had I done that path, I would have found myself midway through residency probably dropping out, because that's the kind of person I am, probably to go study whatever the hell I wanted to after that. But, because I'm always, ultimately, those are the kind of risks you have to take unless you are willing to perhaps risk connection with your soul and your spirit. We all come across those moments in life. But I have no doubt that would have been not the right path for me. So, the thing that happened at 21 for me that really, and that was the earliest I could actually study, because I think you have to be 21 to start applying for your master's in Chinese medicine in the States. Was an event that I wrote about in my book, Spiritual Fertility. A very event where I was out kind of on a bit of a spirit quest, I suppose, where I was alone camping. And I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. And now I'm based in New York and LA, and I travel the world workshopping my book and doing all kinds of fun stuff. But when I was in Austin, I would go out west a lot to the Southwest because a lot of my healers that I worked with were out there. And this one particular trip, I was heading out to Big Bend National Park, which is this amazingly stunning, very isolated place. And about halfway out, I had a friend who had been through town, a rock climbing friend of mine, and I had started to get a fever. And by the time I got there and I set up my tent and was out there in this like desolate, cold, but beautiful environment with all these stars, I had a full on kind of like exogenous, wind heat situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I was so out of it that I had like honey and tea, and that's all I had with me. And I was very much off the grid. So I brought it into my tent and just unconsciously, very, kind of feverish in a febrile kind of way. And midway through the night, I woke up and there was a bear like circling my tent. And I thought to myself, what have I done? I brought honey into my tent. Like, what is... But so in that very moment, though, I recognized that I was being bear medicine in American Indian medicine is a very powerful medicine that is about deep, deep, deep spiritual healing. So I took this as a sign, and I prayed in that moment, and I made a commitment to the universe that if I was safe that night, and the bear passed by, I could wake up the next morning and be better, that I would change my path. And I did. That was Saturday, and that Monday I drove back to Austin, and I went and applied at AOMA to start in, that was November, and I started studying in January. I began my path. So, sometimes we need those pushes, those major divisions in our road, in our path to steer us the right direction. That certainly was what it took, because I already knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. But it was a very scary decision at that time. So.
It is. A lot of times these big decisions that are so life-changing are scary. And I so relate to what you're saying. I actually started out as an architect working in New York City, and had gone to an acupuncturist to regulate my period, because for about at least 13 years, or I don't remember how many, but I had irregular periods, and I wouldn't get my period for sometimes like 3 months in a row. And it was just really terrible. And the only thing that I was able to do was the birth control pill. No doctor really gave me a solid path. And so basically going to the acupuncturist, he regulated me. And that was the beginning of my path to natural medicine. And at the time, I remember being miserable at my job. I felt like a bird in a cage. It was kind of similar. When you're on the wrong path, it can literally suck you dry. And I think it's one of the great causes of disease is being on the wrong path. You'll get signs from your body. You'll get all kinds of problems if you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. Another thing that made, I thought about as you were mentioning this about going on your path and getting these challenges that came in your way that awoke in you, is a lot of these women on the fertility journey. It's this wake up call that actually alerts them to either hypothyroidism or something. And sometimes they'll even say, the fertility journey saved my life, because had they not had that as a great motivator to change something,
100%.
they wouldn't have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And taken
this is
a different path.
This is why it's very important that we pursue and continue to pursue the medicine that seeks out the root instead of just treating the symptom. one of the most essentially important
Exactly.
things that you can do to empower any of the people who are in your life, including yourself or your patients, if you're a practitioner, or your friends or family, or your children, is to give them the space when they're in a healing crisis to integrate it and acknowledge what it
Yeah.
means for their greater path. Sitting with people's suffering is not
Yeah.
easy. None of us like to do it. And the modern world is against it. There's no time for it. There is zero time for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a wonderful, beautiful client who I worked with this week. I do phone sessions now on the spiritual fertility method around the world. And a beautiful woman who's a healer in Ireland I was speaking with this week. And it came up, she has secondary infertility, so she has a healthy 2.5-year-old child, and she's now having much difficulty getting pregnant again. But someone who practices as a healer herself, I gently reminded her of this very fact. That this time in her life where it's not happening is a very important time for her. Like it should to be treated with reverence and sacredness instead of just like trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what's wrong,
Yes.
how to fix it, and how to move on. You know. So I think that
That's right.
that's a very important, what's difficult with infertility with that versus a chronic condition like asthma or IBS or digestive stuff is when the very different thing is that when you have something locally happening in your body, like I had my asthma that I took for my whole lifetime to heal, will take my whole lifetime to heal. But that's something I already have experienced. I know the stories around it. It's in my body, right? It's in my local environment. With fertility, you're desiring something or you're wanting to obtain something that doesn't exist yet in your local reality, in your
Mm-hmm.
body. So it's a very different kind of opportunity to, I think I write about this. You really have to look at many different relationships that you have, especially to your faith in the universe, to God, or your belief system, into your relationships, into the health and stability of your own body, into the choices you've made. It opens up a window that's the biggest window of healing that I've seen. And that's why I think I was most drawn to the work of fertility. I think, other than perhaps like some catastrophic, like, major divorce or major visits from like death, accident, crazy stuff. I think fertility is one of the biggest windows for personal healing that there is.
It really is. It's a kind of an interesting. I think when you work in this field, you see it
Mm-hmm.
more. When you're going through it, it kind of it comes in your face, and you're just like thrown off your path, and you're like, "What is going on?" And you don't know what to make of it at first. I think it's important for us as healers in this field to definitely point that out and be there as a support. And I love that you say hold a sacred space. It's so important to bring in that sacred, because really what's more sacred than inviting a soul into your life and really opening that whole channel. And it really doesn't come down to this end goal of it just ending up whether with a pregnancy. It's about also healing and getting through this challenge and everything that comes out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and all the triggers that it causes. And it's such a multifaceted thing.
It is. It is. Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of exercises in my book that I talk about. And so when I work with people, I come up with unique and individual exercises, usually for everybody. Practical magic is what I call it, but things that they can do to help. So there's the thing of us
Hmm.
saying this. It's a great opportunity, but then there's what is that? How do you actually, when you're really in the space of suffering and wicked suffering and pain, what can you do on a day-to-day level? And uh, it doesn't help to have somebody tell you to relax or to go do these things or these things
Yeah.
or these things. Ultimately, I started out. I have a really intuitive gift within my medical practice. I definitely would consider myself a medical intuitive. I have a capacity that goes beyond just the analytic or rational or the clinical even. So I was working more on that level for a few years, and which was a beautiful way to work. I really enjoy working more intuitively or psychically, as some people call it. And I still do that work with with my
Mm-hmm.
patients and my clients that I work with. But I ultimately realized that what was more important was that I help return people to their own seat of awareness and their own intuition and their own advocacy, and how that was a bigger step for my work than remaining like a solo interpreter of people's experience. I didn't need to be so much a mirror as I needed to help people be empowered in taking up their own intuitive power and their own intuitive knowledge. So that's a lot of what the book is about, is returning people into practical ways to come back into expansion in their nervous system, to come back into a relationship with the universe, with spirit, to look at some traumas that they're holding from the transgenerational line or from this lifetime, and how to both clear those and also how to advocate for themselves within this complex field.
I love that. I love that you address spirit, because I think that that's always something that's drawn me into Chinese medicine. And that's the one thing, as amazing as modern medicine can be, that's the one thing I wish they would include is the spirit.
Sure. Yes. Well, maybe in 250 years.
Yes. I think that's an accurate amount of time that it might go in. But I will say that a lot of practitioners are becoming a little more aware and open, which is nice, because there are definitely some ways that they could coexist and work together very well.
Yes.
And hopefully it'll
Well,
keep moving in that direction. That's my
for
hope.
sure.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I'm not, I've moved beyond integrated medicine or, even the practice of, I don't have much advocacy left in me within the realm of the day to day conversation about validity of holistic medicine versus allopathic medicine. For
Yeah.
me, like, I don't care to have those conversations anymore.
Hmm.
I have 20 years of clinical experience and extremely high success rate in helping people get pregnant around the world. And for
Yeah.
me, that's enough. I never
Right,
need to
exactly.
fight
You
or
don't
have a
need
say. Exactly.
you don't
Yeah,
need
yeah,
this study or that study to know that. You just know it from your own
exactly.
experience. That's
Exactly.
how I feel. Anecdotal evidence. I mean, it's a real thing, and you see what you see, and that's that. And you don't need to have it documented in order to validate it.
Correct. That's
Yeah,
right. That's
I'm with
right.
you on that 100%.
Exactly.
So what do you consider spiritual fertility to mean?
Yeah. Well, spiritual fertility is the title of my book. And when we think about, originally I was using more of the term psychic fertility, but that's a bit of a triggering word for some people,
Yeah,
especially
yeah, I know what you mean.
people who have a little bit more of some more traditional or fundamentalist spiritual beliefs. I didn't, the way that I think about psychic is the psychic, the psychological, the
Right.
psychedelic, or psychosis, like anything psyche means the ladder up from the physical realm to the spiritual realm, to
Right,
the
of the mind,
energetic,
yeah.
or the mind and spirit. So spiritual fertility was the next title that came out of that. And it literally is, spiritual fertility is kind of catch-all term for the practice of using the tools of mind body medicine, of esoteric practices, of spirituality, all of these tools that might have be classified into more self-help or new age beliefs, anything that comes from the energetic or the more of that realm, to as a tool, as a personal tool, essentially to help get your nervous system, the endocrine system, out of fight or flight or hypervigilance, sympathetic nervous system response, into parasympathetic, into expansion and relaxation, and into a state where all of the hormones that happen with stress response are allowed to mitigate themselves. What I found in my practice after looking at, I did this clinical doctorate in women's health and fertility and was practicing, and I was looking at my practice in New York City, wondering why, outside of what I was doing with really great clinical training, differentiation and wonderful herbal training, the right points at the right time, and bifurcation of cycles and days, and the 4-phase menstrual cycle. I have a hardcore, extensive study in the logistics, and I studied with everybody wonderful in the field of gynecological medicine, obstetrics, and fertility and Chinese medicine. I put in all that time to learn, and then I started practicing. And I was like, what am I doing that's different? Because I seem to be really successful. And I started to think about the way that I was interacting with people and how all of my history, tools of spirituality and spiritual medicine and spiritual practice, I was integrating into each conversation I had with people, which is not unlike what a lot of people do in the practice. But there was something about developing a practice of allowing people to have a new way of relating to getting out from the pressure and heaviness of it all being on their shoulders. Every decision being about how they interpret it or how they act. And that I say that infertility, well, I never even say infertility, but the fertility problems that we're facing
I'm the same.
but it truly is one of the unintended consequences of the sexual revolution and of modernity and individualization. Like, it's wonderful. We have more and more unique paths. We have less collectivity in our religious backgrounds, the way we're structured, the way we're supposed to come up through things. But the burden of all of that is that it also really engages the mind. It really engages the endocrine system. Everybody feels like it's all up to them at the end of the day. And people lose sight of a greater interwoven fabric, the cosmic fabric about life and death, thinking that they can somehow put all their blocks in a row and do everything and check everything off, and then it'll just happen. So my book, Spiritual Fertility, and my method, Spiritual Fertility, is a very practical way to help people if they have a religious belief or spiritual belief. It doesn't matter. Like, people who I work with can be atheist, and I can still use the tools of spiritual fertility to help relax their nervous system, their endocrine system, and to help them get pregnant. That's the core of it. You don't have to be a true believer, but you can start to use these tools to help your overall health, and especially your hormonal health.
I think you bring up a really good point. The intention, it's all about intention. And I think that when you're working with people, when you have an intention and you see them doing well, that can't be underestimated. That really works powerfully in the outcome of the patient. And when you tune in as a practitioner and you already perceive it as spiritual and you already believe and see it happening, it's huge. I think it's an invisible force that we don't realize is so powerful. And I do also believe that everything begins in the spirit.
For sure. Absolutely. Energy before matter. I mean, that's Einstein.
Yeah.
That's quantum physics. Without even, you can speak, because I work with the top reproductive endocrinologists, fertility doctors in the world at this point, and we have private conversations between each other. We're always talking about how this great mystery, how everything can be great. You can have, 15 day 5 grade A embryos, and they still might not work. Why? Right? So it's or you can have a perfect cycle, or you can have, there can be so many things that seem right. It's a great mystery. It's a divine spark. There's
It is. It's a great
There's
mystery.
no way for any of us to really understand what is happening there. So it's all great.
Yes, yes.
And so, but that's what's difficult about that is that when you have desire to actually have a child, then you have to enter into that kind of conversation. And what if there's no time for it? Or what if you're scared about your age? Or what if you're not supported by your partner? Or what if you don't have any money? Or what if work will let you have off time? Or there's so many things that are the
Yeah.
reality of how that conversation is a difficult one to have in the modern world.
It really is because it's so multifaceted, and the more I practice this, the more I realize just how many different aspects of it there are. First of all, it's so unpredictable. One thing you may be able to somewhat predict is that you're gonna increase the chances, and whether it's because you're changing the diet, probably all of it. It's the diet, it's the supplements, it's the herbs, it's the acupuncture. It's also aligning, becoming more aligned
Mm-hmm.
with accepting it. Another thing too is that I notice we live in an age where instant gratification is at an all-time high. I mean, that's what marketing, all the marketing
Sure, sure.
that's being used by every single company out there is about having something now, immediate. So yeah, that subconsciously trains us to believe and conditions us to believe that if we want something, it's going to happen at a snap of the fingers, and it should happen in that way. And the truth is, that's not a pace of nature. And as you know, in Chinese medicine, we're all about reflecting nature and how it is. I mean, our bodies reflect how nature works.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
especially, with fertility, we're bound by cycles. I mean, you have to wait a couple of cycles for things to actually change. It's not just a day-to-day thing,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not linear, it's cyclical. So it's really that paradigm shift, it's that opening. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, and you can also, yes, you can increase the chances, but yet there's this great mystery,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know what it is and why it's happening. And it's all about listening. Like, what is it that the universe, want me to see, do, or follow? It's such a complicated scope. And it's interesting because it's probably one of the most challenging, you as a practitioner, it's one of the most challenging fields in a sense, because you spend so much time learning, and there's always room to grow, and you're constantly learning and growing, and trying to figure this out, and also trying to be supportive for people in the process. But yet at the same time, it's this great mystery, and you're bound by that. You could do as much as you can, but then there's that that mystery that you say, which is like so on point. There's only so much you can control.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
think that people who do this, for the most part that I've spoken to, people who are first of all very drawn to working with fertility, and you have to be, because it's something that it's like a lifetime, it's a
Yeah,
lifetime cause.
yeah.
It's
It's
something that
I
you
mean it's
really,
a difficult, and it is a very difficult. I mean, I'd love to. I mean, certainly because I've been doing it now for quite a while, and I give a lot of
hmm
respect and reverence to the people, my teachers who came before me, who carved out, the path, the trails that
yeah,
I could follow. Some amazingly
yeah,
brilliant people who had, more adversity and more difficulty, who stuck to their guns and their belief systems to continue to offer this work to people. Have a lot of respect for their work. And I really feel like, for me, yeah, it's hard. I still have days where I have tools that I've learned over a long time of being a healer to stay centered and protect my energy, and to keep a certain, way chi up within my body, and to listen
yeah.
very carefully to the signs and signals I get within my own health. And I practice this every day. And I also allow myself to be a conduit, a channel, a clear
Right.
place for things to kind of move through me. And as much as I do a good job at protecting my body and taking care of myself, there's still times where, some of the stories and the energy leaks in, and it's heavy. It's super heavy. So I'm drawn to intensity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
drawn to
I think
shadow
you have to
work.
be built a certain way to
Yes,
do
it's true.
this.
And I also have been training in it since I was a child. Like my whole life,
Yep.
about being in with people in their greatest suffering. I'm used to. So
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do this work in this lifetime, and I really feel like ultimately, if you look at all of the, this may or may not mean anything to somebody who's going through infertility right now or infertility treatments, but I think that if you look at all of the great philosophers and psychologists of history, like Freud, for instance, or like Carl Jung, even though they spent most of their lives looking at adults, treatment for adults, by the end of their life, they all come back to children
Mm.
and the treatment of children and the early years and the time around birth and the first couple of years of life. It's a very dynamic and important time in the entire arc of a person's story. And for me, I believe that begins in the preconception period and
Mm-hmm.
through gestation and through birth. So
Right.
I think for me, like my deeper motivation, I spend a lot of time in Costa Rica, and a friend of mine, a couple of years down there, it's like, why, it's kind of, he was prodding me a little bit. It's kind of this like analytic guy. It's like, why do you do, but also very spiritual. It's why do you do this work? Why do you even care? And I had a kind of narrative, a story around it. Like, I like to empower people. I like people to have healthy children and healthy. I like to empower people. I like to have people have healthy children and lives, and
Mm-hmm.
how much I care about that. And he was like, no. Why do you really do this work? And yeah, I remember in that moment thinking, it's because I care about Earth. It's
Right.
because I care about the future of this place and the experiences that we have around the way we're conceived and born. And I have no judgment, zero judgment of whether or not people using, donor eggs or donor sperm or IVF or
Absolutely.
natural. For
Yeah.
me, none of that matters in the realm of spirit at all. Zero.
Right.
What
That's right. That's
matters
such a good point.
what matters is people's capacity to navigate that space with self-consciousness and advocacy for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
that is what matters to me. And without that piece, I don't like the idea of people just being kind of herded through some of the most magical and important moments of a person's life with this materialist outcome as their desire, instead of, because you miss the magic. And
Yeah.
we are chronically missing the magic. And
That's so true. It's so interesting. I just had, and I've said this in the past couple of episodes because I had a really interesting conversation and with a couple of people about how we put joy on the shelf. We shelf joy
mm-hmm,
until we get what we think we need in order to experience joy. We
mm-hmm,
shelf it. And it shouldn't be shelved. It's something that we can access at all times. To me, that joy equals magic. It's that magic of life. It doesn't need to be put on hold.
agreed.
And as a matter of fact, I truly believe that if you evoke that which you want to bring into your life, and you're just, people are using a symbol for that. That's what that means. When I get this, I'll have that. Just go for that, like
Mm-hmm.
the that you want, the essence, which is that magic or that joy. Go for it. Allow yourself that. And you can have it because it really, where does it originate? It originates in our mind and our spirit. If you do that, I believe that you will attract anything that connects with that energy.
Absolutely. There's an exercise in my book called Reasons Why. And that exercise is all
Mm,
about identifying that and using that space to,
I
this
love
is
that.
basic law of attraction theory that,
Yeah.
when you give yourself now, or you recognize now what it is you're looking for in the future, that you're more capable of
Yeah.
drawing it in. And I do believe that that is true. I think that it's also another opportunity to look at some unconditioned, like some very unconscious belief or some blocks or some fear. Again, none of this is easy just because it's the
That's
energetic
right.
or spiritual
It's not
doesn't mean
easy.
it's easy. Sometimes it's more
Yeah.
difficult. But I see it
Yeah.
and I know how much a difference that makes in the overall fertility process and how it ends up helping you get pregnant. So
It does. It does. And I think that both of us are in very similar paths in the fact that like we both feel very passionate about empowering those on the fertility journey. It's all about empowerment because on so many levels. And I have, as you had mentioned, speaking to reproductive endocrinologists or people that are really like advanced in their field, and some that are so open minded and so aligned with what they do, which I actually recently have found about just through the stories of my patients. I'll ask them their experiences, and every so often they have one that they just say is absolutely a remarkable human being. But it's so unfortunate that it's not always the case, and sometimes they feel literally like their essence and spirit has been ripped out on every appointment, and looking at their labs, and that's something that's so important. So I always stress that people need to listen to their instinct and their intuition, even when they're going to somebody who's reputable or is considered to be the end all be all,
oh sure.
physician. You have to listen to your instinct and your intuition. And, even though things are being diagnosed, it doesn't mean that that's 100% true. I've seen so many times where it's not true, and they basically disprove it by going to either another doctor or just kind of following their own intuition and going a natural route. Or it could be natural, or it could be another route that's assisted reproductive therapy. It could be anything, but it's so important to listen to a person's intuition
Well, and if I
in
could
this
speak
process.
directly to your listeners within this topic, directly, I want them to understand that there's no person in the world who can mitigate your fear in this practice, in this journey. There's there's nobody
Yeah.
who you can trade your power to in exchange to take away the fear. No one, and that is it's a really hard pill to swallow. But I think the sooner that you do understand that and realize that everyone out there who you engage with works for you, they work, all of your doctors work for you. I work for people. I have a great skill, I have a great talent,
Hmm.
I'm an expert in my field. But when I work for somebody, I work for them. And just because somebody has
Yeah.
a guru kind of thing to them, or their friends have all had great experiences, when you get into that room, the memory for you to hold is they can't take the fear that I'm holding around this topic can't be taken away. But nobody can trade this from. Nobody can take this away from me. This is mine. I have to navigate this. I have to move through it.
Hmm.
And everybody who I'm coming encountering, and who is working for me has the opportunity to help support me, right? And so when they're not doing that, when they're not in that space, a lot of the work of my book is about teaching people to identify what that feels like in their body and their nervous system. So if you're in contraction with the
Hmm.
person who's supposed to be helping you conceive, you need to get out of there. That person is
That's
not
right.
on your side, even if they're a
Yes.
great guru, even if it took 6 months to get in, even if all your friends got pregnant with them. If you're sitting in that room and you're like, this is not right, then it's not right. And it's
Yes.
not going to help you get
Yes.
pregnant having that in your nervous system. It's not going to help you. So it might be better to work with
No.
the kind of new person on the block who's half as cheap, who nobody knows. If you get in there and you feel expansive and your body's like, yeah,
Right.
this is great, I am listened to,
Mhm.
that's where you go.
Yeah.
But, that is why advocacy in the system is so important. And that's also, I think, a place where people lose their power very quickly in the system and end up kind of 3 or 4
Yeah.
cycles deep in IVF, waking up on the other side going, what have I been doing?
That's right. That's right. I love those words. Such great. I was going to actually ask, is there a tip that you could share with the listeners? I think you just gave them an amazing tip. And really to go within and feel your body. And if you do feel that contraction, listen to it 100%. I think that is great words of wisdom. It is because I think that what happens is because it's sometimes we don't listen to the invisible because it's not something that we can measure
Mhm.
with data. Sometimes we tend to ignore it or not think it's valid or real, but that feeling is so real. And it deserves
Mhm. Mhm.
attention. And I think that you usually don't contract when
Agreed.
you're aligned.
Well, we contract. Well, yeah.
Typically doesn't
I don't
happen.
know. I think I think contraction is a daily thing that happens almost every moment. I'm in pretty good alignment right now with
Yeah.
my path.
Yeah,
There's
but I'm
still lots
talking
of
about the
moments of
contraction that you just
contraction.
feel
It's true.
the
It's
complete
true.
resistance,
The
like,
complete resistance. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
tense, like, yeah. And I had it chronically when I was at the wrong job with the wrong people. And I was, so usually, and now I don't feel contracted. I feel open.
Good.
That's but yeah, you can obviously like throughout the day, you have different things and you can't blanket statement, but you do, I do feel it now, now that I started paying attention. If I feel off,
Hmm.
there's definitely a very significant feeling that's visceral, and it's important. It's worked for me to pay attention to that, and I think
Yeah.
it would work for a lot of people because it's such a difficult journey to navigate
Hmm.
because number one, it's so confusing, and then you get these diagnoses that unexplained infertility. What does that even mean?
Sure. Yeah.
What do I do with this?
Sure.
And that's probably more confusing for people than getting PCOS or something that's specific, like this is what it is and that's what you have. I think I found, just
Hmm.
based on speaking to so many people, like that probably is the most frustrating thing is when people don't know and they give him like this question mark diagnosis.
Yes, and
So
a statistic
yeah, so
as
it's a
their
confusing.
diagnosis, exactly. Yeah. Well, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. So where can people find you if people want to, like, cuz you serve basically everybody
I
online
do.
and do
I am everywhere.
consultations.
The reason I
Yeah.
wrote the book was because it was accessible information for anybody. You can go on my website
Mhm.
to buy the book. I recommend doing it that way because if you buy the book through my website, you get a very beautifully constructed 4-week free downloadable spiritual fertility coaching method video series
That's great.
for free. And there's really practical information and exercises in that. You can just listen to it while you're like driving to the grocery store or walking. So, but it's the book is available on Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's in bookstores. It's from Hay House. It came out this summer. So it's everywhere. It's very available. My work online, I do one-on-one sessions. I offer those around the world. They're broadcasts. We do them through Zoom, so they're recorded. They're very powerful, highly dynamic sessions that we learn a lot about what's going on in a person's life, and I help to point out perhaps some places where they're losing their power, where they can advocate for themselves better. Some more of the energetic material comes through, the spiritual material comes through, and those are 90-minute sessions, which are some of my favorite things to do right now. I do have clinical practice in New York City. I'm there 2 weeks a month. I am in Los Angeles at some interval. I have a workshop coming up in New York in February, and I offer mini workshops during the year, which is where people can come in person to the class. And most of that, half of the time in my workshops, I open the space up for Q&A, and I use my channel basically to help give people direct answers. That's also a really great way for people to work with me if the other methods aren't there. And I'm going to be in Australia in doing these workshops in Bali this spring. I'll be back in France, which I just came from, doing the same, and
Oh,
throughout
wow.
the States as well.
Amazing.
So I'm also always happy to, if anyone's interested in hosting a workshop, if I get, I'm always interested if I can fit it into my schedule too. So this is my work. I'm always happy to answer any questions if I can. There's an email address attached with the course when you buy the book that gives you access to me. And in general, there's a lot of other resources out there on my website. But the best thing to do to start with is to either schedule a one-on-one session with me or to buy my book. Those are the best things I can offer people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Julie Vaughn, for coming on. This was fantastic, amazing. I love the fact that you incorporate spirit, but have the background on so many different angles of the body, the human body, and really understand it from a physical, mental, spiritual perspective. A lot of people are going to really benefit from this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.